Dad skipped my graduation for a vacation with his new girlfriend. Now he wants my help after she sued him for $30,000. Growing up, my dad, Marshall, was never the reliable parent. I don't have memories of him rushing home to make it to my school plays, or helping me with my homework, or even just sitting down for dinner with us. What I do remember is the excuses. "Sweetheart, I promise I'll be there next time. I had an important meeting. I'll make it up to you, okay? Daddy's just busy. I'll take you out for ice cream this weekend." Does that sound good? But the ice cream never happened. The next time never came. And I got used to it. Even after my parents divorced when I was 12, I still held on to the tiny hope that maybe, just maybe, my dad would change. He had shared custody of my younger brother Reed and me, so every other weekend, we were supposed to spend time with him. But most of those weekends were cut short. "Sorry, sweetheart, something came up at work." It was always work. Until it wasn't. 2 years ago, my dad started dating Celeste. And suddenly, it wasn't just work anymore. Now, when he cancelled on me and Reed, it was because he was taking Celeste on a trip or helping Celeste's son, Milo, with something. Milo, who was not even his child, suddenly became his #1 priority. But Reed and I? We were just leftovers. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself, it's just the honeymoon phase. He'll come around. But he never did. And when he skipped my graduation for a vacation with Celeste, I finally saw the truth. I had been reminding my dad about my graduation for months. "Dad, it's on June 5th. Are you coming?" Of course. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I reminded him over and over again. Every time, his answer was the same. "I'll be there, sweetheart. I promise." And I believed him. Like an idiot, I believed him. The morning of my graduation, I woke up excited. I put on my cap and gown, feeling like I had finally made it. My mom, Anita, and my brother, Reed, were getting ready too. But my dad? He wasn't answering my texts. I tried to call him. No answer. I called again. Nothing. At first, I thought, maybe he's just running late. Maybe he's already on his way. But as the minutes ticked by, that little voice in my head got louder. What if he's not coming? Finally, just 30 minutes before the ceremony, my mom tried calling him too. Still nothing. At that point, I was panicking. My hands were shaking as I kept staring at my phone, waiting for a response. I kept holding on to hope that any second now, he'd call and say, "Sorry, sweetheart, I'm stuck in traffic, but I'll be there soon." But when he finally called back, the second I heard his voice, I knew. I knew he wasn't coming. His voice was casual, relaxed, like he was just calling to say hi. "Hey, sweetheart. What's up? Dad. Where are you? The ceremony is about to start." There was a pause. Then he said, "Oh, yeah. About that. Celeste and I are in Cancun right now. We needed a little getaway." I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. "What? You're, Dad, are you serious? You promised." "I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry, but it totally slipped my mind. I couldn't even process what I was hearing." "You're on vacation? You skipped my graduation for a vacation? We've just been working so hard lately, and we deserved a break. You understand, right?" I hung up. I turned my phone off. And when I walked across that stage, accepting my diploma, my mom and my brother were the only ones there, cheering for me. Not my dad. He was too busy sipping cocktails on a beach with Celeste. And in that moment, I finally understood something. My dad had never put me first. And he never would. That was the day I decided. I was done. After my graduation, I blocked my dad's number. No explanations. No second chances. Just silence. At first, I thought he would try harder to reach me. Maybe send an apology. Maybe show up at my apartment. Something. But he didn't. He barely even tried. He sent a few texts. "Hey, sweetheart, what's going on? Call me." Then, after a week of no response, his tone shifted. "I don't know what your problem is, but this is childish. That was his last message. And then? He just gave up. He stopped trying to fix things. He stopped calling. And honestly, that hurt more than anything. Because it just proved to me that I had never mattered to him in the first place. Months passed. At first, it was hard. I kept expecting him to show up at my door, to apologize. But he never did. And eventually, I stopped expecting it. I moved on. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for his attention. I wasn't desperately hoping for his approval. I was just living my life. And it felt amazing. Until, 6 months later, he came crawling back. And this time, it wasn't about rebuilding our relationship. It was about him needing something from me. 6 months later, he came crawling back. I thought I had finally escaped him. For 6 months, my life had been quiet, peaceful. No last-minute disappointments. No broken promises. No useless excuses. Then, one evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it without checking, thinking it was my neighbor. And there he was. Marshall. He looked different. Tired. Stressed. Not the put-together, charming businessman he always tried to be. For a moment, I just stared at him, completely frozen. I hadn't seen him in half a year. Part of me thought he might be here to finally apologize. But then he spoke. I need your help. That was it. No, I'm sorry for missing your graduation. No, I should have tried harder. Just, I need your help. I crossed my arms. With what? And that's when he told me about the lawsuit. Marshall explained the whole mess in one breath, as if he had practiced this speech on the way over. Apparently, he and Celeste had been together for 2 years, and he had been helping raise Milo, her 8-year-old son. I almost laughed at that. So he had time to play dad to Milo, but not to his own children? But I kept my mouth shut. Celeste had gone away for the weekend with her friends, leaving Milo in Marshall's care. She trusted him to keep an eye on her son. But, in typical Marshall fashion, he decided that something more important came up. I had a meeting with a potential investor, he said. So, instead of watching Milo, he left the kid playing outside alone. Now, Milo has autism. It's not extremely obvious, but it's still a factor. And since he was bored and unsupervised, he decided to climb a tree in the backyard. The tree was tall. And it was getting dark. You can guess what happened next. Milo slipped and fell from a high branch. He hit his head. Concussion. My dad didn't even realize what had happened until he found Milo lying on the ground, dazed and hurt. At that point, he had no choice. He rushed the kid to the emergency room. But here's the worst part. Instead of calling Celeste immediately, like any decent person would, he told Milo to keep quiet about it. Just say you weren't feeling well, okay, buddy? No need to stress your mom out. What kind of grown man tells an injured child to lie? Of course, Celeste found out anyway. And she was furious. She moved out of his house immediately, hired a lawyer, and filed a lawsuit against him. $30,000. For the medical bills. For the emotional distress. For the complete betrayal of trust. Honestly? I don't blame her one bit. I need you to testify for me. That's what he said. You're my daughter, and if you support me, it'll make a difference in court. I just stared at him. For a second, I thought he was joking. This man, who had completely ignored me for 6 months, who had skipped my graduation for a vacation, now wanted me to stand by his side. I almost laughed in his face. Instead, I just said, no. What? He blinked. No, I repeated. You don't even want to hear my side of the story? I already did, I said. And it just proves, once again, that you only care about yourself. His face turned red. I'm your father. You're supposed to help me. I let out a cold laugh. Like the way you helped me on my graduation day? Silence. For the first time, he looked genuinely guilty. But it didn't last. Because instead of apologizing, he tried to justify himself. That was different, sweetheart. I had a lot going on. So do I interrupted. I folded my arms. You don't get to ignore me for 6 months and then suddenly show up when you need something. His jaw tightened. So that's it? You're just going to let your father get destroyed in court? You destroyed yourself. That was the truth. And he knew it. For a moment, I saw something flicker in his expression. Like he was finally realizing that I wasn't his backup plan anymore. I was done with him. I'm not helping you, Marshall. I suggest you call your lawyer and work something out. I could see the rage building in his eyes. But I didn't care. He was no longer my problem. Without another word, I closed the door in his face. And for the first time in my life, I felt zero guilt about it. The fallout. After I slammed the door in his face, I thought that would be the end of it. I had told him no. I had made it very clear that I wanted nothing to do with him. But Marshall? He never knew when to quit. When he realized I wasn't going to help him, he went after my mom instead. And that's when everything spiraled out of control. The next morning, my mom, Anita, called me. "Hey, honey, did your dad come by your place?" I sighed. "Yeah. He wanted me to testify for him in his lawsuit." She let out a long breath. "That makes sense. Because now, he won't stop calling me." I sat up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, he's been calling and texting non-stop since last night. At first, he was asking me to convince you to help him. But when I told him I wasn't getting involved, he just lost it." "Lost it how?" She hesitated. "He started blaming me. Saying that I turned you against him. That if I had raised you to be loyal to family, you wouldn't be acting like this." I laughed bitterly. "So now it's your fault?" "Apparently." I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. I tried to be neutral, but now I've had enough. I told him the truth. I told him I wasn't surprised you didn't want to help him. Because he's spent your whole life proving that he doesn't deserve your support. I almost cheered. I had never heard my mom stand up to him like that before. "How did he take that?" I asked. She sighed. "Not well. He hung up on me. But I don't think he's done." I had no idea how right she was. That evening, around 7 p.m., my mom called me again. This time, she sounded shaken. "Marshall showed up at my house." My stomach dropped. "What? What did he do?" "He was pounding on my door, demanding I fix this mess. When I wouldn't let him in, he started kicking the door." "Are you serious?" "I had to call the cops, honey." My heart was racing. "Did they arrest him?" "No, by the time they got here, he had already left. But they told me to file for a restraining order if he does it again." I was livid. Not just because he had harassed my mom, but because he had the audacity to act like he was the victim. Like we were the ones ruining his life. Like he hadn't burned every bridge himself. And as if that wasn't enough. He wasn't done yet. The final message. That night, my phone buzzed. I checked the number. Unknown. I clicked on the message. And I felt my blood boil. Marshall had used a burner phone to text me. His message was filled with anger. "I can't believe I raised such an ungrateful, selfish daughter. You're a disgrace. You turned your back on your own father when I needed you the most. After everything I've done for you. If this is the person you've chosen to become, I'm glad I never wasted my time building a relationship with you. You are not my daughter." I just stared at it. For a long time. And then I did the only thing left to do. I deleted the message. I blocked the number. And I moved on with my life. He lost everything. A week later, my mom got an email from Marshall's lawyer. Marshall had agreed to Celeste's settlement. He was paying her the $30,000. That meant the lawsuit wouldn't go to court. It was over. But that wasn't the biggest shock. He also gave up custody of my brother, Reed. For years, my dad had been neglecting my brother anyway. He had been canceling weekends and putting zero effort into their relationship. So my mom had already been working with a lawyer to change the custody agreement. But now? Marshall willingly gave up his rights. He told his lawyer that he didn't want any more drama in his life. He told them my mom could do whatever she wanted because he was done. It was like he had finally realized that he couldn't control us anymore. That he had burned every last bridge. And then? He sent one last email. To me. And my mom. The final goodbye. The email was short. Cold. Distant. I'm done with you both. I'm done with all of this. From now on, don't contact me again. I have more important things to focus on than this petty drama. I'm moving forward with my life, and I suggest you do the same. My mom read it out loud. Then she looked at me. And we both laughed. Because the audacity of this man was insane. He was acting like we had been chasing after him, begging for his attention. Like we were the ones causing problems. When in reality, we had already moved on. He was the one who showed up at my door, begging for help. He was the one who harassed my mom. He was the one who couldn't handle the consequences of his own actions. Now, he wanted to act like he was choosing to cut us off. He could think whatever he wanted. The truth was, we had cut him off a long time ago. Now, months later, my mom, my brother, and I are happier than ever. My dad? I have no idea what he's doing. I don't check in on him. I don't ask about him. Because he's not a part of my life anymore. And I've never felt freer. At the end of the day, my dad had every chance to be a good father. To show up. To be there. To care. But he chose himself every time. And when life finally caught up with him, he expected us to clean up the mess. He expected loyalty when he had never given it in return. But life doesn't work like that. You can't treat people like options and then expect them to stand by you when everything falls apart. My dad lost everything. His girlfriend. His reputation. His money. His kids. And in the end, he has no one to blame but himself. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.